Ashley Pond was a 12-year-old girl who lived in Newell Creek Village Apartments in Oregon with her mother Laurie. On the 9th of January 2002, Ashley was running late to school. It was a little after 8 a.m. and the bus was just minutes away. The walk up the hill to the bus stop was less than 10 minutes. She was a popular student who was a member of both swimming and dance teams. On that day, she was looking forward to dance practice after school. Laurie expected to hear from her at around 6:15 p.m, but when she didn't, she became worried and called the school. She found out that she had not been there that day. Laurie called the police and reported her daughter missing. She told them that none of Ashley's clothes or belongings were missing and that she didn't believe that Ashley ran away. Authorities agreed and believed that Ashley was likely abducted. Detectives learned from Ashley's classmates that she never got on the bus. They canvassed the neighbourhood and surrounding woods, searched Ashley's internet activity, ran a background check on her father, and found no leads despite the assistance from the FBI. Meanwhile, 13-year-old Miranda Gaddis, Ashley's neighbour, dance team, and close friend, found herself at the centre of the investigation. On the 8th of March 2002, Miranda's mum Michelle Duffy left for work at 7:30 a.m. Authorities believe that Miranda left around about 8 a.m. and went up the hill to the bus stop. At around 1:20 p.m, Miranda's older sister called their mum to tell them that Miranda had not been at school that day. Ms. Duffy called the school and found out that Miranda was indeed absent. She reported her missing and the FBI was again called in to investigate. The circumstances surrounding Miranda's disappearance and presumed abduction were eerily similar to Ashley's 2 months earlier. It seemed that whoever the perpetrator was, he or she seemed to be targeting the same type of girl. There were striking resemblances between Ashley and Miranda. They were close in age, involved in similar activities, had similar facial features, height, weight, and both had brown eyes. And most importantly, both girls disappeared on the way to the bus stop. Authorities believe that a stranger may have abducted them while on the way there. However, without an apparent crime scene or physical evidence, authorities began to investigate the possibility that they were taken by someone that they knew. Since they disappeared, students were picked up from their homes instead of from bus stops. However, the residents of the Newell Creek apartment complex were terrified that a child abductor and possible serial killer walked amongst them. The girls' parents hoped that they would one day be found. While investigating, the authorities were trying to work out whether the girls were abducted by someone they knew or by a stranger. The girls' mothers didn't believe that they would have gone with a stranger, so they figured that they were abducted by someone they knew and trusted. The case was solved on the 24th of August 2002, when human remains were found in a microwave box in a storage shed behind the rented home of a 39-year-old Ward Weaver, who lived down the street from Newell Creek apartment complex. An autopsy confirmed that they were Miranda's. 2 days later, a second set of remains were located in a 55-gallon barrel under a suspicious concrete slab on his property. He claimed that the slab was put there recently for his hot tub. They were identified as Ashley's remains the following Sunday. Weaver was first arrested on the 13th of August that same year on an unrelated rape charge. The victim was his son's 19-year-old girlfriend. His son had called 911 about his girlfriend, but also told dispatchers that his father had killed the girls. Both of the girls were friends with Weaver's 12-year-old daughter and had visited her at Weaver's home. Authorities discovered that Ashley was a friend of Weaver's daughter. A year before the disappearances, Ashley had accused him of molesting her. The problem for investigators was they were awash in possible suspects, some 28 suspects that lived in the same apartment complex that could not be ruled out. For months, authorities had no real evidence that a crime had been committed. It wasn't until Weaver attacked his son's girlfriend and the FBI was able to obtain a warrant to search his property. Soon after the grisly discovery of the girls' bodies, Weaver was charged with the murders. To avoid the death penalty, he confessed and pleaded guilty to the rape and murder of his daughter's friends. He's now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Interestingly, in August of 2001, Pond accused Weaver of attempting to rape her at his house, and the incident was reported to police. However, charges were not formally filed by law enforcement. On the night of the 27th of February 1978, 16-year-old Roxanne Woodson and 26-year-old Joe Shepherd were in the car together with two friends when Shepherd tried to make sexual advances on her. She refused and he tried to attack her. She escaped the car and ran into the woods. Shepherd chased after her. Roxanne was never seen again. The night after Roxanne was reported missing, authorities went to Shepherd's home to bring him in for questioning. Shepherd asked if he could change his shoes, and the officers let him. While in his room, Shepherd reached for his shotgun. The officers noticed this and fired 2 warning shots at him. Eventually, they were able to wrestle the gun away from him. He was then brought in for interrogation. Shepherd told authorities that on the night that Roxanne vanished, he tried to seduce her, but was unsuccessful. He did admit to chasing her into the woods, but he claimed that he lost track of her and couldn't find her. Shepherd was charged with assaulting a police officer, but was released on bond. Hundreds of searchers tried to locate Roxanne, but were unsuccessful. After several days, the search was called off. Then, on the 8th of April 1978, Shepherd's mother noticed her dogs around a certain pile of debris in the backyard. She moved some of the debris and saw 2 hands sticking out of the ground. Authorities determined that the body, which had been partially buried in the ground, was that of Roxanne. At that point, authorities charged Shepherd with first-degree murder. He was arrested at his mother-in-law's home. During the second interrogation, Shepherd claimed that he was chasing Roxanne in the woods. She fell and hit her head on a rock. He told investigators that he panicked and returned to the car with his friends. He said that he returned later that night and put Roxanne back in his car. He then took her back to his house and buried her in his backyard. After being charged with Roxanne's murder, Shepherd was implicated in 17-year-old Cathy Clowers' 1976 disappearance. When questioned, Shepherd stated that he not only knew Cathy, but also knew where she was buried. He took investigators to the location, and they eventually found her clothing and remains. Both victims had their pants wrapped around their heads. On the 17th of April 1978, Shepherd was formally indicted with the murder of Cathy Clowers. On the 17th of July that same year, while awaiting trial at the county jail, Shepherd escaped with 2 other inmates after one of the inmates feigned illness and then locked the jailer inside their cell. The 2 other inmates were ultimately caught. Joe Shepherd, however, remained at large. Shepherd had been on the run for over a decade. The case was televised on Unsolved Mysteries on the 5th of October 1988. A viewer saw Shepherd, so he contacted the police. The following month, he was then captured and arrested in Ontario, Canada, under the alias Joseph Tripp. At the time, Shepherd was living in the government housing project with his wife and 2 children. In December of 1989, he was returned to prison in Tennessee. He was convicted of second-degree murder of Clowers, but after an appeal, the charge was lowered to involuntary manslaughter. In the spring of 1991, he was convicted of first-degree murder of Woodson and sentenced to death. The sentence was later commuted to life in prison. Shepherd died in prison of natural causes in August 2010. In May of 1996, 24-year-old Julianne Williams and her 26-year-old girlfriend, Laura Winans, went on a camping trip at Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. They took their golden retriever Taj with them. The couple went on a trip to spend some time together before Julianne started a new job at Lake Champlain in Vermont. They were last seen alive on the trail on the 24th of May. On the 31st of May, Julianne's father contacted the authorities. He let them know that the women were missing and they were overdue from their camping trip. They found the car parked at Skyland Lodge and began a search of nearby trails. Park rangers quickly found their dog wandering around unharmed and without a leash, but there was no sign of the women. The following day, a grisly discovery was made. Their slain bodies were found in the park, about a quarter of a mile from Skyline Drive off the Appalachian Trail. Their hands were bound, their mouths were gagged, and their throats were slit. Both were partially undressed, yet neither women had been sexually assaulted, or at least no semen was found. Laura was found in a tent, and Julie's body, along with a sleeping bag and sleeping pad, was approximately 30 to 40 feet away down a little embankment. The bodies were undiscovered all of this time, despite it being in such a popular part of the park on a busy holiday weekend, because of the backcountry regulations at the time stated that backpackers had to camp away from designated trails, fire roads, and developed areas. It wasn't a heavily used or heavily travelled trail. They were following the backcountry regulations at the time, which required them to be out of sight. A camera was discovered at the camp with photographs of their hike along the White Oak Canyon Trail. They also climbed Hawks Bill, the highest mountain in Shenandoah, before they pitched camp for the last time, a few days after they entered the park. Maryland resident Darrell Rice was a prime suspect in the murders. In July of 1997, he was arrested for the attempted abduction of a female bicyclist in Shenandoah National Park. He pleaded guilty to the crime and received an 11-year sentence. In April of 2002, he was charged with Julianne and Laura's murders. Investigators claimed that he killed the couple because he hated women and homosexuals. He made statements to the investigators that he hated gays and preyed on women because they are more vulnerable than men. He also stated that the women deserved to die because of their sexual orientation. He reportedly had poor relationships with female co-workers, often verbally harassing them. He was also seen on videotape entering the park on the 25th of May and 26th in 1996. Furthermore, a witness saw him in the park around the time of the murders. However, investigators failed to connect forensic evidence from the crime scene to Rice. In 2004, the charges against him were dropped due to the lack of evidence. He was later connected to the murder of Alicia Reynolds and the attempted abductions, known as Route 29 Stalker. He pleaded no contest to the attempted abduction of one of the stalker victims. Serial killer Richard Evernitz was considered a suspect in the murders, but he committed suicide in 2002, as police were about to arrest him in 3 other murders. It was not known if any evidence connected him to this case. The FBI was investigating the case in connection with the 1986 murder of a lesbian couple that took place in Eastern Virginia, in which the victims were similarly bound and slashed. A double murder that the FBI considers to be the first of a possible series of murders in that state, the others involving heterosexual couples. It's believed that their murders were connected to the death of Alicia Reynolds. The FBI continues to investigate the case. Although Darrell Rice remains a suspect, he was released from prison in 2011. 24 years later, the case remains unsolved. Dutch students Lisanne Froon, 22, and Kris Kremers, 21, both grew up and studied in Amersfoort. Froon had graduated with a degree in applied sciences, and Kremers had just completed her studies in cultural social education. They had both lived in the same dorm room and worked together at the same cafe. They'd been saving money to go on a trip to Panama, and they hoped to learn Spanish and help teach the local kids arts and crafts. They arrived in Panama on the 15th of March 2014 to commence a 6-week vacation. They toured the country for 2 weeks before arriving in Bocate on the 29th of March to live with the local family for 4 weeks while volunteering their time at the local school. On the 1st of April, they went hiking with their host's dog through the scenic forest around the Baru volcano in Bocate, Panama at around 11 a.m. And they had a late morning snack with 2 young Dutch men before embarking on their hike. Suspicions were raised when the dog returned to the host's home that night without the young women, and when both the women's parents stopped receiving text messages they'd been receiving daily. The following morning, the students also missed an appointment with the local guide. On the 3rd of April, authorities began aerial searches of the forest, and local residents began searching. On the 6th of April, the students' parents arrived in Panama, along with the police, dog units, and detectives from the Netherlands to conduct a full-scale search of the forest for the next 10 days, whilst offering a reward of $30,000. Froon's blue backpack was discovered 10 weeks later by a local woman by a riverbank near her village of Alto Romero. When she was questioned, she said she was unsure if it had been there the day before. The backpack contained 2 pairs of sunglasses, $83 in cash, Froon's passport, a water bottle, Froon's camera, 2 bras, and the women's phones, all packed, dry, and in good condition. The women's phones showed that some hours after the start of their hike, someone had dialed 112, which is the international emergency number, and 911. The first distress call was made hours just after they began to hike, one from Kremers' mobile phone at 4:39 p.m, and shortly after that, one from Froon's mobile at 4:51 p.m. None of the calls had gone through due to the lack of reception in the remote region, except for one 911 call attempt on the 3rd of April that lasted for a little over a second before breaking up. On the 5th of April at 5 a.m, Froon's phone battery died and would not be used again. Kremers' phone would not be used to make any more calls either, but was intermittently turned on to search for reception. After the 6th of April, numerous attempts of a false PIN code were entered into Kremers' phone. It never received the correct code again. One report showed that between the 7th and the 10th of April, there were 77 emergency call attempts with that phone. On the 11th of April, the phone was turned on at 10:51 a.m. and was turned off for the last time at 11:56 a.m. Froon's camera contained photos from the 1st of April, suggesting that the women had taken a trail at the overlook of the Continental Divide and wandered into some wilderness hours before their first attempt to reach 911, with no signs of anything unusual. On the 8th of April, 90 flash photos were taken between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m, apparently deep in the jungle and in near complete darkness. A few photos show that they were possibly near a river or a ravine. Some show a twig with plastic bags and candy wrappers on top of a rock. Another shows what looks like toilet paper and a mirror on another rock. And another shows the back of Kremers' head. The discovery of the backpack led to new searches along the Clowers. Kremers' jean shorts, zipped and neatly folded, were found atop a rock in the opposite bank of the tributary, a few kilometres away from where Froon's backpack had been discovered, although later witnesses will claim the jeans were not neatly folded but found in the river itself. 2 months later, closer to where the backpack was discovered, a pelvis and a boot with a foot inside were found. Soon at least 33 scattered bones were discovered along the same riverbank. DNA testing confirmed they belonged to Froon and Kremers. Froon's bones still had some skin attached to them, but Kremers' bones appeared to have been bleached. It underwent forensic analysis and checked under magnification. However, there were no scratches or marks of any kind on the bones. Police questioned the locals and the hikers who had been in the area at the time, but nothing besides the photos and the call logs provided them with any evidence as to what had happened. There was not even enough evidence to determine the cause of death. To this day, the disappearance and deaths of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon remains unsolved.